This video is a continuation from the previous video. Okay, so this one is the one that I was talking about in the last video that I said had a better image of, so I went and found it. This is it, and this is a really cool photo. It's got these really old shutters that are taken off of buildings, and they're stacked together, and they're in a salvage yard. This is called architectural salvage, and it's between Atlanta and Helen, somewhere along the way. And what makes this an interesting shot is there are parts and pieces from multiple buildings, and there's a story to them, and they're different, and they go really well together, and they're interesting, and this makes a really cool kind of historical architectural kind of shot. The building itself is beautiful. The architecture that it's in is an old barn. It's really beautiful. It's made out of cedar, and then there are these shutters on the side, and they just this nice pops of color and this great texture. And let's see if I can zoom in here a little bit and show you. Yeah, look at that. Look at all that. It's cracking, and it's beautiful. And so it turned out to be a really cool photo because it represents recycled buildings. Okay. Let's go to South Beach. All right, so these are photos that were taken in South Beach, Miami, of architecture. South Beach, Miami has Art Deco architecture that was built at the time that was the modern style in the 1930s and 40s, and then it was abandoned. And South Beach, Miami became derelict. Became really a lot of crime, a lot of deterioration, and graffiti. The building started to decay. And I'm trying to think of 1990s. Yeah, 1990s. People came in and decided to restore them. And now, well, okay, so it had a transition. So people came in, they started restoring them and kind of bringing them back to their glory and heyday. And then unfortunately what happens when you do that is it becomes really beautiful and unlike anywhere else in the world, and it starts selling for a lot of money, and people come in and it becomes inexpensive to the people who are living there, and it chases away the culture. And so South Beach, Miami is now a tourist trap. Last time I was here was 2013, and I was just heartbroken that the culture was gone. It used to be that when you went to South Beach, you could sit on one of the little restaurants and have this very cool lunch that was like an infusion of different flavors, because there's the Cuban culture, and you get some people from other European countries that were living here, and you would see the models walking by and the transvestites on rollerblades, and it's just these great, beautiful people that the people match the architecture. And it was just such a wonderful place to go. And the last time I was there, it was just a bunch of tourists. So I tried to cut them out of my pictures as best I could. And hopefully you'll just see some really great architectural shots. So this just bright blue background sky. The golden morning light or afternoon light hitting the buildings. And you see how the buildings terrace up, and I just tried to capture this interesting movement in something that doesn't move at all. And I did that by taking it at an angle. I could have shot this straight on. There's enough interest here to do that, but I didn't. I got the buildings with the corners facing me and created this three-dimensional form that has a rhythm to it. This was just some really cool iridescence on the tile. I was kind of trying to see if I could catch it in the water fountain, but I don't know, I'm not in love with that. This is a pretty good one. You see the name of the building, you see the front of the building, you've got the door, you've got some palm trees, you can see the back of the building. This is pretty good in terms of we're going, we got a foreground, a middle ground, and a background. This is the Netherland Hotel, and this is a water fountain out front. I like the contrast of the colors. I think that works really well. But the fountain is really very got a lot of intricate details. And from this far away, I think you lose a lot of them. You see that it's there, but it's not until you get closer to it, and this is a better shot. And now you can see these little faces spitting water and all the details and the bubbles in the water. And you still get some of these great colors in the background, but that's a better shot than this. And so this was towards the end of the day. And so the sun is starting to go down, and this is later at the end. And instead of taking these shots standing facing the door straight on, I got at the angle where I could see the corner, and I had this slant. And so it created this bright blue, beautiful sky. To keep it from being too heavy, I didn't let it take over the scene, but I shot at an angle. And I was cropping all the tourists out down here. I might have shot further. Here's one where you can see the front door and then the building. And again, it's at an angle. You see there's an angle here. I didn't shoot it straight on. This is one where there are no people in it. Just some canopies out front. Got some great repetition going horizontally as well as up the building. And you don't have to see the whole building necessarily to be able to see the architecture and the style and the theme. Breakwater. I couldn't really get a good shot of that during the day, but I'll show you when I got it at night. There's another one where I turned it. Unfortunately, these awnings were in the way, or tents were in the way. This was great because there was a car out front. So you get these old Cuban cars. Actually, the cars aren't Cuban, but in Cuba they have a lot of old restored cars that are still around. And they're beautifully restored and cared for and loved, and they're all over Cuba. So in Miami, that Cuban flavor, in addition to the Spanish architecture, creates this scene that's United States, but still feels very cultural. The Colony Boulevard. The sun's starting to go down. This one was great. There were no people, but tables, chairs, the big umbrella. That red is really my big pop of color, my focal point, with the blue and the yellow balanced in the background. And I love this one too, because you get the grill of the car, you get the buildings, they're kind of matchy-matchy. It's all very monochromatic for the most part, with just some little pops of orange in there, the trees. And again, you see none of my buildings are straight on. You see the corners of almost all these buildings that I photograph. And then the sun's starting to set here, so we're starting to get some lights on the building. And then the neon starting to come to life. I can see inside now because the sun has gone far enough behind the horizon that it's no longer creating reflections. So I can now see into the windows. Legally, as long as you are on the sidewalk, the public sidewalk, not private sidewalk, but the public sidewalk, which is adjacent to a street, and the streets themselves, you can photograph inside buildings that you can see into legally. They are yours. I'm not saying no one can sue you. You can sue anyone, but they can't win anything. If there had been people in here and I photographed them and I posted this and somehow or the other it incriminated them, they have no recourse. I can keep this up. I was legally in my right. And by the way, I have paralegal certification from Emory University, studied the law, was curious about that, and that's why I know this. Now, we're starting to get some really cool things cooking here with the neon. The neon's on at night. Starting to make some really interesting shots. Clouds have started to roll in. And now we're really lit up. We got all the lights. The people are starting to blur so they don't matter. This was about the architecture, so I really didn't want people. The same shot that I took during the day, here it is at night with the car and the building. The breakwater, much more interesting at night, even though you can't see the building that much anymore, but you can see the neon and the lights. Here, people are just silhouettes. I like that. Because people wear clothes and have haircuts that have style, and they give a time to your images. If I took this in the 70s, they'd be wearing 70s clothes and 70s haircuts. And maybe if I don't want that, it's good to have them silhouetted, because then they become timeless and they're, more enduring, like the architecture. The Victory. Great colors, right? The colors now have become my subject here more than the architecture. The overhead clouds moved in, and the lights, this was a long-term exposure that I did with my DSLR. It's really hard to get these shots now with your phone. This is when you're going to have to start thinking about having a single lens reflex camera to work with to get these longer exposures. I overexposed it so I could get more detail, and the people would blur. Now, he stood still so you could see him, and they stood still, so there are people in here. But I love all the colors. Very Art Deco. Okay, and now we're just night scenes in Miami. And again, none of my buildings are straight on. They're all at an angle. Oh, and that's the last one. And the cool thing about this one was I was on the other side of the road, and so you can see some of the lights moving on the cars that were in motion, and got the building in the background. You can see a little bit of the sky. They got these great colors, these great forms. You can still see the building without it just being a picture of a building. You get the culture, you get the life around it, and it brings these architectural shots to life. Okay, I'm going to stop here and continue in the next video.